AskReddit by Megalomaniac 3x Trump supporters. What point did you stop supporting Trump and why? My dad started out from voting for and supporting him and always being annoyed when people talked shit about Trump. Then the pandemic happened and he spent a lot of time at home watching TV and seeing Trump give speeches. Then he says, "This guy is a fucking moron," and he became more anti-Trump as time went by, especially after the 6th of January. I was like 19-20 years old when he became president, so it was my first time voting. My parents are both Republicans, so naturally I kinda just followed suit and voted for him. Then I watched everything that happened throughout his presidency, watched the Republicans and their thoughts and actions based on everything that had happened and was happening, and here we are. Voted blue last election, as a registered Republican, which I find joy in, and likely to do so again. I hate politics with a passion, but some of this stuff is just too fucked for me to justify staying out of. Please do vote. Your voice matters, and we need it to stop what Trump started and normalized in our country. When he refused to condemn David Duke, ex-head of the KKK, and said that some veterans suffering from combat PTSD were not strong enough. Never liked him, but couldn't believe that he said about McCain are like people who don't get captured. Back in the 80s when he didn't ever pay his contractors. I've hated this prick for 40 years. New Yorkers tried to warn this country. I don't know how a single person could support him after Puerto Rico. He said their natural disaster broke their budget, begrudgingly visited and tossed paper towels like basketballs, and mocked the pronunciation of the name. Oh yeah, and didn't give a shit that an entire territory was destroyed with thousands of dead Americans. My favorite was the press conference when he explained to everyone that Puerto Rico is an island, in a tone of voice that made it clear he had found out that Puerto Rico is an island 5 minutes before the press conference. Sharpie Gate. Why not just admit you were wrong and move on? Like that the fuck? That idiot took a fucking Sharpie and drew on a map to show he was right on where a hurricane was headed. So fucking stupid. I live in Alabama, near the Gulf. We are extremely familiar with severe weather. The number of people here willing to insist he was correct about a storm hitting Alabama and the Carolinas at the same time was shocking. You could see in their eyes that they knew how stupid it sounded. They made our weather service make an official national apology for being right. That's kinda the moment I realized how serious shit could get. My neighbors, half a continent away from the man, were willing to call a sunny day a hurricane for him. People stocked up for the storm. We all knew it wasn't coming. The local government was willing to issue a revised and purposely incorrect emergency advisory. All for him. He was fascinating on Letterman in the 1980s, openly sleazy and immoral, self-aggrandizing, a curiosity to watch, difficult to understand how he could be human. Then I realized he was a malignant narcissist running a confidence game and the charm faded. Man, I hated him the first time I saw him when I was a kid. He just seemed like the rapacious face of greed. Just immediately struck me as tasteless evil made flesh. I'm from the Rust Belt, so elite business types always seemed vaguely sinister, and Trump made himself a virtual caricature of the type. I asked my mom and her answer was not necessarily the 6th of January, but when he tried to deny he enticed the 6th of January. She has come a long way and now realizes she was close to becoming a QAnon lunatic. But now she sees he was a con man. I asked what drew her to him and she said her disgust with Hillary Clinton drove her away from the Democratic Party and basically into the arms of Trump. Now she's mostly disinterested in politics. Interesting. My Republican father voted for Hillary because she wasn't Trump. He hated Hillary, but Trump was not an acceptable alternative. R.I.P. Dad. For my mom, it was when she was exposed to news sources outside of Fox when she was hospitalized for something, not COVID, and the staff said they didn't get Fox, which had compelling enough arguments that the election was stolen narrative was false. Thank goodness for that hospital. His was the first election I could vote in. I really felt my vote meant so much, so I studied everyone running. I didn't like the options, but the things he would say. Grab her by the puss. For one. If she wasn't his daughter, he'd date her. As a daughter of a horrible man, I didn't want more of that sexism in our nation, and I saw the men at his rallies. I saw them. Not to mention his racism and general message of hate and hypocrisy. My family was so anti-Hillary, so when it came out the night of the election that I'd voted for her, it became a screaming match. I showed them clips of him saying things. They said they won't have this language in their home, and I screamed, "You just put it in the White House," then went to spend the night at a friend's. They now condemn him and act as if they were never behind him. I never was to begin with. I commend you for your courage. It's a very difficult thing to go against your parents and family. Standing up for your own beliefs is a very important rite of passage. So good that they came around. Not me, but my aunt uncle. COVID did it. They were both MAGA hat wearing supporters until COVID. My aunt is a retired nurse and was horrified by Trump's lack of leadership. Edit, they did not vote for him a second time. My friend's mom was an early COVID death. She said Trump said it was just the flu, so she took no precautions and didn't seek help when she got sick until it was too late. She's not voting for him again. I liked how Obama said it recently on 60 Minutes. I thought and hoped that the weight of the office would dawn on him and make him take things seriously. Unfortunately, that did not happen. For the first 6 months he was president, I was hoping that he was punking us. That he would stop acting like an ass. Turns out he wasn't acting. That debate where Trump couldn't STFU was one of the alarm bells. That was an absolutely insane debate, and my friends were just dumbfounded by the end and busted out laughing when one of reports said, "In my 40 years of covering presidential debates, I have never seen anything like this. It's an absolute disgrace." I voted for him in 2016. The disappointment started on day one when he continuously lied that his inauguration crowd was the largest ever, and it was all downhill ever since. Truly tedious BS began to pile up, like demanding the Nobel Prize for Bring Peace to Korea, his Charlottesville comments. It's like, come on man, be president. I had to find excuses to keep supporting him. By the end of 2018, ours shit the midterms, Trump had his great month-long shutdown and Mattis resigned, and I had determined once and for all he could not be supported. 2019 came around, I was an anti-Trumper, determined to see him out of office. Would you say you were a really strong supporter of his when you voted? I often wonder how many people voted for him on more of a whim, since he wasn't expected to win anyway, so people may not have felt like they were risking anything by voting for him. When I realized the only reason I supported him was because of parental influence. I used to parrot what my liberal parents said, and then I worked with someone who would ask me follow-up questions. Realized I knew nothing. I spent a few years shutting the fuck up and listening. Now I'm more liberal than ever, but actually know what I'm talking about sometimes. My dad was done with him after he insulted McCain post-death, but that lasted about a week. Ah yes, the pro-military party and their hatred for an officer of the military who stayed behind as a POW to help his soldiers. Their hatred for a man who ran for office against a corrupt businessman that refused to look out for his constituents. And their hatred for anyone bought out by anyone they worked for in the past, but also claiming Trump wasn't bought out by his business partners. No hypocrisy at all in their beliefs. After Home Alone 2. Deleted. My friend told me it was the day he trusted Putin over the US when it came to election interference. Honestly, when he posthumously went after McCain, that started to tip the scale the other way. Then one saw the garbage head conspiracy, anti-science shit started to really take off. I thought to myself, do I really want to associate myself with a party that is so obviously full of bigots and morons? Don't get me wrong, I don't agree with everything the Democratic Party says and does, but as of right now they definitely align more with my beliefs. I voted for Trump in 2016, mainly as a vote against Hillary. It was not a vote I was excited to cast. I hoped for the best and figured DC would wrangle Trump in, and at best he would be ineffective for 4 years. I decided against voting for Trump again when he shut down the government for almost 40 days. The shutdown came as a direct result of a failed campaign promise of building a wall and making Mexico pay for it. Mexico told Trump to kick rocks, so he asks Congress to fund his project. Congress tells Trump to kick rocks. Trump throws a tantrum, shuts down the government, and federal employees' checks stop being written. For over a month, thousands of employees continued to work for no pay, while Trump had the audacity to blame the Democrats for the shutdown. He lost my vote and remaining respect forever, and seemingly has no interest in getting it back from me or anyone else. Who really thought Mexico would pay for a wall? When he didn't do anything he listed on his first 100 days. I was out pretty early in the game. It tickles me how he still campaigns on promises made, promises kept. Yeah? Name one. The last straw for my old man was 1/6. He was a history teacher for 35 years. Called me to tell me to turn on the TV, as we were witnessing history. He then proceeded to do a political 180 while we talked on the phone. Said he had never been so hoodwinked in his life. That's pretty incredible. My dad was born in Cuba. On Jan 6 he said it reminded him of when the communists took over. As an observant Brit, I think what was obvious to me was that Trump was never interested in presiding over a united America. He just wanted to be president, and as long as he could do enough to keep his supporters on side, then that was enough. He seemed to revel in alienating half the country by ramping up the other half. And he was so unpresidential. I don't think many Americans realized how he was viewed outside of the US. We'd genuinely turn on the news around midday to hear what lunacy he'd been tweeting from his bathroom at 5 AM. It was a standing joke, or would have been if it hadn't already been abundantly clear for decades that he was a truly dreadful human being. How he was allowed to hijack the Republican Party and run for office will be discussed for a long time yet. I have never been so mortified to be an American as I have been in the last 8 years. The 6th of January compounded it, and my own mother's descent into QAnon drove it home even further. I feel Lady Macbeth's out damned spot the shame doesn't wash off. It's like having stepped in shit, tried to wipe it off, but the stink just won't quit. I went from being a young teenager just wanting to watch the world burn to an actually educated young adult who wants to change the world if I'm stuck in the middle of it. I joined a political debate team, got educated, and swept many Trumpers while taking state. Hey. Congrats. Nice job. The 6th of January 2021. I tossed my MAGA hat in the dumpster the next day. Last time I'll ever place so much faith in one man. Maybe it was a hard lesson I needed to learn. I honestly thought the 6th of January was the end of MAGA. I thought an attack on democracy itself would be the final step over the line. When that didn't happen, and Republicans hand-waved and excused it, I knew the US was in big fucking trouble. When the leak of the video about grabbing woman's genitals. I mean, how is that not a deal breaker? Also making fun of a handicapped woman and saying his heroes don't get captured. It told me everything I needed to know. In 2020 I hand-wrote postcards for Biden encouraging people to vote. Never did anything for a campaign before, but Trump had to go. Do you remember when screaming "yee" or a little too excitedly killed a politician's career? Crazy how times have changed, huh? I grew up with family who leaned right and I just went along with that. I was doing a lot of grad work when Trump got elected and people who were more politically involved than me got pretty mad, but I really only focused on my not very political schoolwork and didn't think things would noticeably change, because nothing changed from Clinton to Bush to Obama, for me anyways. I remember thinking he was an ass, but not being fully against him just due to the fact that I assumed my family voted for him. I don't remember what was the straw that broke the camel's back, to be honest. Probably some asinine shit over COVID. Then, the 6th of January. Roe v. Wade got me to register as Democrat. I will probably never vote Republican for the rest of my life barring something crazy happening. Edit, then to then. I've never supported Trump, but my parents were strong supporters, reluctantly in 2016 and then enthusiastically in 2020. That changed after the 6th of January. I think the 6th of January should have angered all Americans regardless of party. Not just the riot, but the entire conspiracy to overturn a free and fair election. I stopped supporting him when the pandemic hit and it became clear he didn't have our country's best interests at heart. He let a pandemic rip through our country and let massive racial unrest grow, and he did nothing to unite everyone as these two issues destroyed our country. Yes, as a person in power he should have been doing what was best for the country's best interest, not trying to win votes for the upcoming election. There wasn't a specific day, but it was this gradual downhill from the election in 2020. I realized that the people I had trusted were telling me bold-faced lies, and they thought I was too stupid to realize it. I always thought, well, the climate scientists are lying because right-wing influences say so, and I trust them, or communism is evil and capitalism is good because right-wing influences say so, or Elon Musk is a genius, etc. When I realized that they'd lie about something so obvious as Venezuela hacked the election on behalf of China using computers in Italy, and also, I had to go back and check the sources on all of my previous beliefs. I thoroughly identify as a left-wing anti-capitalist now. My values and morality haven't changed. I've just realized that 99% of what right-wingers claim is an outright lie. That must have been quite the realization. That's a pretty dramatic change. Not a Trump supporter, but I have voted Republican at local, state and Fed level elections many times in the past. Probably more votes for Republican candidates over Dems during my years as a voter. I almost pulled the lever for Trump in 2016. Almost. I'm glad I didn't. So unless something drastically changes with the current GOP, I will never vote for a Republican candidate again. This new GOP is so very disconnected with what most Americans need and want. It's all about power, attention, grift and fealty to one person. And violent reactions to elections if they don't go their way. Think about it: when the daughter of Dick Cheney, the most Republican ever to exist, ditches the GOP, then you know something has gone terribly wrong with the party. When the only two Republicans to show up in the House chamber to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the 6th of January are Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, both of whom support torture via waterboarding, that says a lot about elected Republicans. I was never truly pro-Trump, I was just anti-left. So I bit my tongue and voted for the moron, but after the anti-democracy bullshit, straight up fascist light wannabe nonsense, I voted straight blue down the ticket for the first time since 2012 as an 18-year-old. I am pro Second Amendment, live in Texas, and just voted for a man who wants to ban rifles. That's how badly I hate Trump. Beto shot himself in the foot with that comment. See what I did there? But I'm holding on by a thread that enough people see through Abbott. I was done with him after the 6th of January. Whining like a spoiled kid he didn't win an election and rallied his cultists to attack our capital for any chance to stop the transfer of power. If you look at the comparisons between how Nazi Germany came to be and Trump's MAGA allies, it's scary how similar the two are. Shame how my father, the only one in my house with a college education, still believes in this shit. I realized the only reason I supported him was because I had been brainwashed by my parents, the media they subscribed to, into thinking that all Democrats were evil baby killers. Deleted. I wouldn't say I was ever a Trump supporter. I thought maybe he could do a good job since he wasn't a politician. Within about 2 years it became clear he was essentially the same person, lining his own pockets. The final straw was the realization that he was funneling money to his golf courses by having the Secret Service accompany him there. I'm Democrat but live in a very conservative area and do my best to get along with my neighbors and see things from their viewpoint. I don't know anyone who has stopped supporting him, or is at least willing to admit it. What is baffling to me is that the majority of the Trumpsters I know did not support him back in November 2016. I can't tell you how many times I heard someone say I don't like Trump, but I'll take anyone over Hillary, like they needed an excuse for voting for him. Those same people would literally lay their lives down for him now, and if you count preventable COVID deaths, some did. I know I'm not answering the question, just agreeing that it's a really important one. I hope Republicans and other conservatives can speak freely here without being attacked for still being Republican or conservative. Some interesting comments. I did not support him but had several really close friends that did, and I was just astonished that educated women would vote for him. When I would ask why or try to talk about it, they could never give me a concrete answer, policy, etc. Or if they did and I would say, well, what about this, or that has been proven false, they would get mad. Stayed friends with one of them and don't see the rest anymore, so is moot now. I really enjoyed a female co-worker back in 2016 and definitely thought about pursuing an actual friendship with her, but then she said she would never vote for HRC if we were Americans, because she's too emotional, and I just couldn't be friends with someone who looked at Hillary and Trump and considered HRC to be the emotional one. How is that close to an accurate grasp of reality? Turning point for me is when he started to play buddy-buddy with Kim Jong-un and other ruthless dictators. They played Trump like a fiddle. Not OP, but thank you all for your honest replies. I am not a Democrat, consider myself left-leaning independent, gun lover and believe in certain moderate policies, but I encourage you all to vote blue in November. If Trump's lackers and supporters take Congress this year, we will have more Trump, and, although I know it sounds extreme, could see the end of democracy in this country. I know it will irk some of you to vote Democrat, as it irks me. I don't believe the party has anyone but their own interests at heart, but there is too much on the line. Please and thank you. If any one of you would like to discuss specific reasons why you should vote Dem next week, PM me. I'd be happy to talk with you as much as time allows. When he started denying the election. Edit. Donald Trump is the person who pushed me blue. I was 14 when Trump got elected and wore a Trump pin around the school the day after he was elected. The next school year I got a teacher that actually made us think critically about why we thought the way we did. This made me switch to more left-leaning, and I've been that way ever since. I'm almost 21 now. Edit. It was also heavy parental influence since I was 14, didn't know much back then, didn't even know the concept of politics. I tried to support him as president, but he really screwed up with COVID and then denying the election results, and especially him not telling the 6th of January PPL to leave. Our country needs an entire administration that is competent and has integrity. A president with an insatiable desire for attention simply isn't good for the country. I'd rather have someone who gets the job done by working with Congress. He didn't just screw up. That could be forgivable. He immediately tried to capitalize on the crisis by cornering the PPE and respirator markets simply because he knew people wanted them. He then appeared to be trying his hardest to actually spread the disease out of some mistaken ideas about herd immunity. I just can't understand that Christians can vote for the current Republican Party. Just asking what would Jesus do, say think on anything they say. And not the Jesus who was reinvented by those money-grabbing TV preachers, but the one that's in the Bible. When it became apparent he's a Russian asset. Never was a supporter personally, but I became on team fuck this prick after he refused to admit defeat. Especially after the 6th of January. COVID and the canon lunatics. I at first thought he was different, but see how hateful and deranged he really is. Now stealing classified info? I hope he rots in federal prison. How about when he downplayed covet then caught it and almost dropped dead lol.